this is an updated tutorial on how to do the photo workflow, photo editing guide for the Viewfinder photo editors. First thing you're going to need to do is go down to Finder. You'll see a Finder window. Just go to Go and then connect to server. Now I've already got it punched in here because I've already previously connected to the server on this computer, and once you've connected to the server, you won't have to do this again on, well, you won't have to punch in the address and stuff like that. But there are sheets around the editor's lab you can find with this address that you type in. You type this in and hit connect, and it will connect you to the newspaper server. This is the server where all the photos go and all the materials for the magazine go. We want to actually be connected to this before we start anything else. You'll see inside here, you'll see a folder for magazine 22-23, and then you'll see issue 3, which is the issue that we're working on, and then you'll see a folder here for photos. Inside of that folder is full takes, first edits, and final edits. By the way, I like to be in list mode instead of icon mode. That's just what I prefer because I can click this drop down and see what's in each folder really easily. Okay, so once you've got that done, you're able to access that. You can keep this open, no big deal. Next, you need to get your SD card and plug it into your computer. Before you do this, want to make sure that you have taken your pictures in JPEG mode. You'll see what I mean here in a second, but there's an SD card reader attached to the photo editing computers. You can just plug it in there, and then it should show up here. That's the SD card right there. But I'm not going to just drag and drop my photos from here into my folder. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go through a process so that these photos are organized and well put together. So I can close Finder, then I'm going to open a program, my photo editing program. It's called Lightroom Classic. Go to the magnifying glass up here, type in Lightroom Classic. This one right here, it's not Adobe Lightroom, it's Lightroom Classic, the one that says LRC. That's the program that I want to use. Wait for this to boot up. If it asks you for an Adobe ID, you can punch that in, and then it's going to ask me to sign in with my Adobe ID. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So if you don't have an Adobe ID or you're not sure what your Adobe ID is, you can just open up your browser, go to adobe.com, and then you will sign in. And if you haven't made an Adobe account before, this is your first semester doing this, you would create an account. But I think pretty much everyone who's going to be a photo editor for the magazine has taken my photo class and you've made an Adobe ID. Maybe you've forgotten the password. You can go through here if you've forgotten your password. But you want to make sure that you're able to sign in with your email address, not using Apple or Google or Facebook or something like that. Okay, I'm going to close this, go back to Lightroom, I'm going to punch in my Adobe ID. Okay, you might get something here, new update or something like that. You can click Don't Show Again and hit OK. Okay, you've got Lightroom open and we're ready to get started. So click on Import to start, and it's going to ask you if you want to access some files. Say OK, that's fine. It's going to ask again, might ask something like this. That is fine. And it kind of automatically knows if you've got the SD card plugged in, it kind of knows what you're trying to grab. It knows you're trying to grab some photos from an SD card. But in case it doesn't do this automatically, you can find your SD card. It's going to be called EOS Digital. And find under DCIM, it'll see these are your photos here. So these are the photos that I want to import. I just went into the cafeteria, took some pictures in there for this. It's okay to say copy here, and then we're going to do under to where it's going to go. This is really important. So where it says to where it's going to go, click on that and choose other destination. And then you're going to go to this option right here, this file serve location. This is the server. We're going to click on Newspaper Server, and we're going to actually just upload this directly to the server. Now here's what's really important if you're going to do this. Really important that if you're going to do this, that your images are JPEG images. You see how all these images have JPEG at the end of them? That means they're smaller, they're compressed, and that's fine. When you're out taking photos for the magazine, make sure you're shooting in JPEG, not shooting in RAW. So the images shouldn't say CR2 or NEF or something like that. They should say JPEG at the end of them. If they don't say this, come talk to me and we'll talk about converting them to JPEG before we put them on the server. Because if you put them on the server as the RAW file, it's going to take up way too much space. It's going to take forever. But we can get to put these right onto the server. So we're going to go into Photos, go into Full Takes, and then that is OK. You can hit Choose. Then under File Handling, I don't think there'll be any options here we have to worry about. Under File Renaming, this will be really important. We're going to rename these files. Because right now all these files have this default IMG, a bunch of numbers name, and we don't want it to have this. We want it to have a memorable name that we can find easily. So click on Rename Files, and then under Template, we're going to have it be Custom Name and then sequence. Custom name sequence. Under custom text, you're going to put what is called the slug. It's basically a one-word name for the story. Most of the stories we have a slug. You know, it's basically a one-word or maybe two-word summary of what the story is. In this case, I'm going to call it cafeteria. I'll just call out the custom name for this. And then for the start number, that's fine. I can just leave that as 1. The start number is going to be 1. And then extensions leave as is fine. And you're going to see a sample. Every image here, instead of being called IMG, a bunch of numbers, is going to be called cafeteria 1, cafeteria 2, cafeteria 3, etc. Great. Done with file renaming. Apply during import. I can ignore that. Destination, I'm going to put it into a subfolder. And the name of that subfolder is going to be cafeteria. I'm going to call it and make a subfolder called cafeteria. Organize, I'm going to put it into one folder. And that's going to be fine, just to do into one folder. Okay, once I'm done with that, I'm ready to import these. They're ready to go. They're going to go into this cafeteria folder that I've made. Go ahead and click on import, and it's going to start importing those files. Okay, great. So the nice thing is that Lightroom has imported these photos. If I go back to Finder, my little blue face down here, Finder, and I go into that newspaper server, I find newspaper server here, and I go into the magazine, go into issue 3, go into photos, and then full takes. Hey, look, I've got a new folder here called cafeteria, and inside of this folder is all those photos I just took. They're already in the server, so that your photo editor or anyone else you need to collaborate with already has those photos available for them in that full takes folder. But the photo editor you're working with is not going to use this full takes folder very often, or hopefully they don't need to. Because what we're going to do is we're going to narrow it down for them into this first edits folder. Okay, so we're going to go through a few steps with these photos. Before we do anything, the first thing we need to do is to give a caption to all these photos. And this is a really important process. I want to make sure we have better captions this semester. This makes it so that when you upload the photos somewhere, they're searchable. Even when you upload them to WordPress, they're searchable. It's a really good feature. What we're going to do is click on the first image in your batch of images here so that it's highlighted. It doesn't matter. I mean, just choose the first one here. And then make sure you're in library mode, which you should be by default, and you should see this option here for metadata. I'm going to click on this to drop this down. Metadata is code that's attached to every image. And it, for example, has the date and time that you made the image and all that kind of thing. Under this drop down here next to metadata, choose large caption. We're going to give this a caption, and we're going to do it according to AP style. I've given you a style guide. It's in the lab. It's at the photo editing stations that you can see. But we're going to make sure that all of our images are in this caption style. So I'm going to write it out and I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. So I'm going to write a caption that works for basically all these images, but then later on, once I've narrowed them down, I'm going to specify certain details and certain captions like people's names and things like that. But for now, I'm going to give it a caption: students eat their breakfast, is what I might say, in the cafeteria in the student center at Grandview University in Des Moines, Iowa on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. Then I will hit Shift and Enter twice, Shift Enter, so that I can put in my name. So I'm going to put in KC McGinnis /Viewfinder. So Shift and Enter is how you can go down, you can make lines. Okay, so I've given this a basic caption. Let me break down the caption. First of all, every caption needs to have, it's going to be a complete sentence. It's going to be a complete grammatically correct sentence. So first it's going to have a subject. The subject of the sentence is the part of the sentence that is doing something. In this case, it's students. Students are the subject of this sentence. It's going to have a verb. In this case, it's eat. It's going to be eat. Eat is the verb. It's going to have something like that. So students eat, they're doing something. This sentence has an object, so they eat their breakfast. Not every sentence will have an object. Not every caption has to have an object, but this one does, eat their breakfast. Every sentence that you write needs to have a subject and a verb at least. So students eat, that's a subject. That's the one part of the sentence that's doing something. Eat, that's the verb. In this case, we also have an object. That is something that the verb is being done to. So the breakfast is having eat done to it, right? In addition to that, we need to have the location, and we want to be as specific as possible. So I wrote in the cafeteria, in the student center, at Grandview University. So I'm going to try to be as specific as I can. Then beyond that, I'm going to do the city and the state. So in Des Moines, Iowa. And then last, you need to have the date when that happened. You would say on the day of the week, and then the day of the month, and then the year. Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. Then at the bottom here, you have your credit, so we know who took every photo. Then you can hit enter. Actually, if you're in large caption mode, I guess you don't even have to do shift and enter. It's already done. So you can just click outside of there, and that caption is saved. But I've only given that caption to this first image here. I want to give this caption to all of these images here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this first image, then I'm going to hold shift, and then click on this last image, and then I'm going to choose this option down here at the bottom. It says sync. And choose this. I'm going to get some options for syncing. I'm going to check this box for basic info, and I can uncheck these ones. I just want to check this one here for caption. I want to synchronize the caption across all of these photos. I'm going to do that and hit synchronize. It might take a moment. Now all of these photos have that same basic caption. Great. That's going to be really important for me. I know that they have the same basic caption. And now I'm going to start narrowing down these images. Now that I've captioned them, I'm going to narrow them down to just a few that I want to actually give to my photo editor. So these photos, like I said, we put them in this full takes folder in our file serve here in our newspaper server. They're in this full takes folder. But we're going to take some more photos. We're going to narrow down some of these photos and put them in this first edits folder. So I'm going to look through my photos, and I'm going to choose photos that I think might be able to make the cut. I'm going to do this in rounds. So I can double click on my first image here. And what I'm going to do is every image that is acceptable, every image that is just, it's not out of focus, it's going to be okay, I'm going to give it 3 stars down here in this star option. So like this image is acceptable. That's fine. I'll give it 3 stars. If you want to, you can start at 2 stars. You know, it doesn't really matter to me. I'll start at 3 stars, and then any image that's acceptable. You can also just do this with the number keys on your keyboard. So these images are fine. This one's there's a little bit of motion blur here that I don't like, so I'm going to keep that one out. This one's out of focus. This one's, of course, out of focus. But I'm just getting any images that are just, you know, acceptable. I'm going to go ahead and give them 3 stars. And, of course, I shot a lot of images, and I'm going to go ahead and give a lot of them 3 stars. So you'll go through this process. You can go through it pretty quickly, right? It's a good way to make sure that you're looking at every single image that you took, and also identifying problems you might be having. Okay, so I've got some images here. Now I'm going to, if I click on my little grid here, I can see all my images, and I can see the images that I chose in this first round have 3 stars on them. I want to narrow it down now. I want to go here to filters, and choose filters for rated images. Now any images that have any stars, 1 star or higher, are going to show up here right now. So I've only narrowed it down to 24. I need to narrow it down more than this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to find images that I like, images that are maybe, there are duplicates, and I want to choose one that I like better. Try to narrow this down a bit more. I'm not crazy about this image. I'm not going to give it 4 stars. I'll go ahead and give this one 4 stars. Of course, I want to make sure I've got an establishing shot. This might be a good establishing shot for me. Let's see, I want to have good moments. This is not a great moment. This is an okay moment. I like the negative space here with the fork and the plate. I'm not thinking too much about the way the images are toned right now, whether the colors are right, that sort of thing. I'm just trying to find images that work. I like the interaction here between these two and these photos. I'm going to give some images some 4 stars. I don't like the way this one is off kilter. This one's a bit better. I like that moment. I don't, you know, maybe this image is okay. Again, maybe this could be an establishing shot. I don't like the way this person's legs are cut off here, so I'll go with this one. And I like this one better. Okay, so now I'm going to filter out only the 4-star images. So now all I can see is the 4-star images. So I've narrowed it down to 16, but I really want to narrow it down to like 7 or 8, fewer than 10 if I can, unless this is like a big photo essay that's going to take up a lot of space. I mean, for basic assignments, you want to narrow it down to 7 or 8. Of course, there are exceptions depending on what you're doing. So the way I'm going to narrow it down now is I'm going to think like in terms of the kinds of shots I need. I know that my editor needs an establishing shot. So what's my best establishing shot? Looks like I've got one here. Looks like I've got one here, and I've got one here. I'm going to go with the layers in this one. So I'm going to go with this one, and I'm going to give it 5 stars. And I don't even have to, I'm just looking at the thumbnails at this point. I know what the images look like. Let's see, I know I need a detail. I've got a detail here, I've got a detail here, and I've got a detail here. This one is gross, so I'm not going to go with that one. This is also kind of gross, but at least it's for someone eating food. So I'll give that one 5 stars. I'll give these apples 5 stars. Now I know I need some moments. I like the angle of this one, so I'll give this one 5 stars. I like the interaction between the two of them in this one, so I'll give this one 5 stars. I like this person grabbing some cereal, so I'll do that. And I think maybe I don't know. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. Maybe this is a good one. Now let's look at filter out my ones that are 5-star, and I've narrowed down to 7. Okay, that's good for me. I want to make sure, once I've narrowed it down, does my editor have everything they need? Do they have some vertical images? Yep. Do they have details? Yep. Do they have some moments? Yep. Do they have establishing shots? Yep. Do they have other images that I just really like? Yep, we got everything there. So now we've narrowed it down. Now my images have this basic caption, but now I'm going to go ahead and give them more detailed captions based on the actual people in the images. So let's look at this image here. If you make an image like this, we've got a clear subject of the photo, right? There's definitely a subject of the photo that's definitely a photo that's about this person or these people. You must get their name. So when you're going out there shooting, take a notebook with you and a pen, explain what you're doing. That will allow you to photograph them. You know, I told these guys what I was doing ahead of time. I said, can I take some pictures? I took some pictures and I got their first and last name. First and last name, you need to have both of those. And then I'm gonna, because I need those for my caption. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on this first image. I have this guy's name, it's this guy right here. I have his name, so I'm gonna go into my metadata, my large caption here, and now I'm gonna erase this students eat there, and I'm just going to put in his name. This is his name. Make sure that you get the spelling right. I'm gonna say this guy eats his breakfast in the cafeteria in the student center. Everything else can stay the same. I can just click outside of that, and I've only changed that caption, haven't changed the other ones. This one, I have 2 guys eating their breakfast, so I'm going to erase this part, and I'm going to go from left to right is how I'm gonna name them. So the guy on the left is Tim Nimley, and we, Dodo, eat their breakfast in the cafeteria. It's the same image for this one, same thing. I can actually just copy this if I want to. Whoops. I can copy this, just Command C, and I can paste it into this one if I want to. This one, okay, so this one, I don't think it's super necessary to necessarily have the names of all these people for this. None of them is like the clear subject of the photo. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep this one as students eat. But I did get these guys' names just in case. And actually, since I have their names, I might as well go ahead and include them. So I'm going to include their names. Grant Beer. Oops. He's the guy on the right. So I'll do the guy on the left is Titus Christensen and Grant Beer. Eat their breakfast in the cafeteria. Great. This establishing shot, I don't need names here. Even though I have these guys' names, it's it's not really about them. I don't need names there. Of course, there's no. This actually, the caption is not right. It's not students eat their breakfast for this one. I need to change this one. I'm just gonna say again. I need to give a subject and a verb. So I'm not just gonna say apples in the cafeteria because there's no verb in that sentence. I'm also not gonna say like apples sitting. That's not what I need. I need a regular verb. I'm just going to say apples, maybe sit in a basket or something like that in the cafeteria, in the student center, and have that one. This one, I didn't get this guy's name. It's not critical because I don't see his face. So because I don't see his face, I don't really need his name. I'm tempted to not tell you that because I'm worried that you'll try to get photos without people's faces so you don't have to go and get their names. We need faces as much as possible. But since I don't have this person's name, I don't have their face, I don't need their name here. But I am going to go ahead and type in a student. Maybe that's an assumption, but I think I'm safe making that assumption. Pours cereal into a bowl in the cafeteria, the student center, and that's it. Now those all have their caption. Okay, so I've given these images, I've narrowed them down, I've given them a basic caption. Now I'm going to do some basic general edits here. So I'm just going to do some simple edits here, nothing crazy. So I can click on my first image here, and I'm going to go to this option up here for develop. Now I'm going to get into some editing options here. If you get this kind of startup thing here, you can close this. Let me show you what I can do here. So first of all, under my basic corrections, pretty much all I'm going to mess with is basic and tone curve. Under basic corrections, for white balance, you can choose as shot or auto, depending on what you think is better. So my camera shot at this kind of warm, kind of magenta-ish. The auto kind of gives it kind of a green hint to it. I think I want it somewhere in between, so I'm going to choose to make this a little bit more blue, but not crazy. I just want it to look real to life, you know, close to life. Okay. Next, I can adjust my exposure and my contrast and my highlights, shadows, whites, blacks. What I can do is I can adjust my exposure a little bit. It's a little bit dark, so I can make it a little bit brighter. But as I've made it brighter, I've lost a little bit of my contrast, and I also might have made this yogurt too bright. So I'm going to hit the highlights, turn those down a tiny bit, and I want to turn my shadows down. I still want it to have some contrast here, some natural contrast. Again, I'm not going crazy with this because according to photojournalism ethics, we can't really go beyond like what's actually in the image. So we're not using brush tools, we're not removing things, anything like that. We're not adding things to the images. I'm just kind of getting basic corrections here. Mostly I'm just giving this a little more contrast. The cameras that you check out from the communication department intentionally shoot very kind of flat, and I want to shoot them a little bit. I want to give them a little more contrast. Okay, this one looks okay. I can go to the next one. Same thing here. I can make similar adjustments. If I want, I can look at the adjustments I made to this one, -17, -11, and make the same adjustment to this one just by typing this in here. -17 for that one, -11 for the tint. You know, and if I like that, that's fine. Again, I'm going to bring up the exposure a tiny bit, bring the shadows down, try to give this some natural contrast, bring in my highlights in. Nice to be nice and bright. But still looking okay. I'm not really going to mess too much with vibrance or saturation, especially with saturation. You can play with vibrance a little bit, but again, this is photojournalism, so we're not going crazy with this. All right, I'm going to make these small changes, and again, the more you're able to narrow down your images, the easier that this part of the job will be for you. You're making some small changes to the images so that your photo editor doesn't have to do these things and has a better idea of just what the images are going to look like when they are printed. There is an auto setting here for tone that you can use, and that could be useful for kind of getting you close to where you want to be. It's not the end of the world to do that, but I think you probably want to have a little bit more contrast than what they're going to do in auto mode. Okay, again, just going through, making these small changes. Okay, so I've made basic toning changes to my photos, and if I'm happy with the toning, then great. And the nice thing is if I'm unhappy with the toning, or if my photo editor is unhappy with the toning, they can still go back to the full take, the unedited take. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them these 7 images in a different folder. So I'm going to go back to my library menu here, so I can see, and then I'm going to click on my grid here so I can see all of my images. Then I'm going to go ahead and select all of them. I can just click on the first one, then hold Shift and click on the last one, or I can just do Command A. Then I'm going to choose this option here for export. Again, if you don't see this option, make sure you're in library mode now. I'm going to choose export, and then I'm going to choose where I want to export it to. I'm going to choose specific folder, and then here where it says choose, I'm going to click choose. I'm going to drop this into, again, the newspaper server, right? Into issue 3 or whatever issue you're working on. This one is going to be first edits. You can click on choose there. And then put in subfolder. It's going to have a subfolder that is the same as the slug, right? So I'll just call it cafeteria inside of that folder. Everything else, I don't need to rename these or anything like that. The name is already fine. Then I can go ahead and click on export. And it's going to export those images. Might take a moment. Okay, once you're done with that, you are done with the editing for whatever assignment this is. You can close this. It might ask you, do you really want to quit? You can say yes. Okay, now when I go into Finder, go into my newspaper server, like I was before, go into issue 3, go to photos. If I go into my first edits folder, now I've got my edits for those cafeteria photos, and those are there. Okay, final edits is something that's for your photo editor. They might make some more changes to this. They might look into your full take because they don't like what they have in here and make some more changes, or they might need to make changes to the captions and things like that. They'll throw those in the final edits folder. But that is your editing process. Okay, good luck.